Truckers of Reddit. What is something you've witnessed driving at night that gave you chills? Story 1. Not nighttime, but close enough. My dad is a truck driver who regularly makes trips to a nearby major city. This city is known as one of the most dangerous cities in the country, so my dad takes special precautions, one of them being he always leaves several car lengths in front of him at a red light so he can get out if needed. One day around 5 a.m., he was sitting at a red light and someone hit him so hard that his truck moved forward several feet and it knocked the hat off of his head. He looked in the rearview mirror and saw someone run up to the back of his trailer and faint. He decided he should stay put and wait for the police to show up. Turns out a Cadillac had hit him from behind going 110 mph. Both men in the front seat were completely decapitated. You could see the spot on the trailer where their heads hit. The driver was still tipsy and high from the night before. My dad was put on leave for several weeks and endlessly questioned. For some reason, the police thought it was suspicious that he had left space between him and the next car. He felt really guilty about it for a long time, but we told him had he not been there, they would have hit the cars in front of him, and more. People likely would have died. I was a kid when this happened, and he never let me ride along with him again. Answer: I almost died in a situation like this. 4-lane highway with a median. We were headed south, and a truck was pulling out of a gas station from the west to cross the median and turn to go north. We barely missed going under, caught the back tire at 65 mph, and jackknifed off. Had we not hydroplaned slightly when slamming on the brakes, we would have gone right under and lost the upper part of our torsos. Bad wreck, still multiple surgeries. Large lawsuit. Not fun. Story 2. Obligatory, not a trucker, but I work as a customer service rep for a trucking company in Omaha. 2 stories that come to mind. Both are quite serious. The first one happened about a year or 2 before I started. One of our local Omaha drivers was grabbing a load from the Council Bluffs rail and headed towards downtown 13th Saint. A woman had stepped out in front of his truck, and she was eliminated instantly. Investigators had later found a tragic end note she had written shortly before our driver hit her. The driver was a new guy, and he quit immediately after the accident. This one happened shortly after I started working there. We dispatched local and OTR drivers, and one evening, just before shutting down for the day, we start getting multiple calls from people in the California area headed west. Motorists are reporting that one of our drivers is speeding, cutting off people, not signaling, and just all around reckless driving. We managed to identify the driver in question, call him up, and the guy is inconsolable. Turns out his sister had been taken down at her apartment, and he was literally racing to get back to Annie as fast as his truck could take him. My boss told him to park the truck immediately and bought 2 plane tickets. One for the driver to fly back to Omaha, and another ticket to fly a volunteer out to California to pick up his truck. Answer: You know, as someone that has thought of Tragican quite a lot in the past, I still feel like the woman in the first story was really kind of a jerk for doing so. In that way, my main idea was to leave a note and go out somewhere secluded to do it and not involve any gifts I was given, or for anyone to find me because I just wouldn't want anyone to feel guilt or anything. That poor guy was just trying to have a normal work day. He probably never got over that experience. He probably blamed himself. He probably feared that happening again. He probably had to get therapy. Maybe he was afraid of driving after that. He likely had so many questions that can never be answered. He for sure never forgot it. All because she had to use a random innocent person in that way. I just think that's pretty fudge up on her part. Story 3. Where do you want me to start? I'll stick with a story from when I was straight and sober, coming back from Kununurra, very northern town in Western Australia, to Perth one night, seeing no one else on the road for hours. But every now and then, on a long straight, I could see a set of tail lights in the distance. All of a sudden, there's the tail lights attached to a trailer that stopped dead in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes and swerved around it. And that's when I realized that the truck towing 3 trailers had run off the road into the only large tree for miles. If not for how this ended, I'd laugh my arse off at the irony. I pulled forwards off the road and jumped out. My co-driver, who'd been asleep but got thrown out of the bunk when I slammed on the brakes, was already calling emergency services. As I got to the back of my 3rd trailer, wisps of smoke started from under the cab of the Volvo, wrapped around the tree. I raced back, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and was running towards the wreck when I heard a groan from the ditch, about 10 meters in front of the wreck. The driver had been thrown clean through the windscreen, and while he was an absolute mess, at least he was alive. The Volvo was, by now, in flames, but that just gave me some light to inspect old mate for injuries. And then I heard the sound that, even now, tears me to the core. A thin, high-pitched squeal, gradually progressing into the most soul-piercing scream I've ever heard. His co-driver had also been asleep in the bunk, and with the truck wrapped around the tree, he was stuck, and I hadn't thought to fight the fire. And now some poor bastard was burning to passing, trapped in a steel coffin, while I just collapsed, impotent and broken. I still drive trucks now. It's my life. It's cost me several relationships and a marriage, but I don't know anything else that I can do. I love the life. I love the freedom, and I always know that I can lose everything in the blink of an eye. But I never again, and never will, drive as a do-up team. I could never live with eliminate a workmate, because I fudge up, edit, closed parentheses to keep a reader happy. Answer, something similar happened to my best friend's dad. I don't remember the full story, but I know he was the one sleeping in a do-up cab. The driver decided to watch YouTube videos on his phone while heading down the highway. He lists into the oncoming lane, and another car is coming the other direction. Not sure what happened, either head-on collision or swerve, but I think swerve. Truck ended up flipped. The driver made it out. My friend's dad didn't. I wasn't even the one related to him, but I can never forgive that driver. I will never meet him, but the thought of having someone else's life in your hands and staring at your phone while driving makes me so mad. Story 4. I still remember the top story from this thread from 6 years ago. Many years ago, I was on what is called a meet and turn. This is where a driver that is domiciled out of one city will drive a load halfway to its destination, while a driver domiciled out of that destination will drive halfway with a load that is destined for my city. We meet in a parking lot, switch trailers, and drive back home. I had been on this run for a few months and found that I always got to the meet point about an hour before the other driver. It was a dark and empty dirt lot at about 3 a.m., so I would stretch out across the seat and take a short nap. One night, about 10 minutes into my nap, I was awoken by a barking dog. I tried to ignore it, but it carried on for several minutes and got louder as the dog got closer. Soon it became apparent that the dog was right outside of my truck, barking at me. Okay, either this dog is Lassie and is trying to alert me to something, or else he's just a pain in the jerk, and I will need to throw something at him to scare him off. It is important to note that the barking had been going on for a good 10 minutes at this point, so I sat up and looked out my window. Standing there, mere inches on the other side of the glass, was a man of about 35. He was a large fellow, and was barking at me. His eyes were crazy, and he was frothing at the mouth a little. The scene really held my full attention for a moment. The sheer creepiness of this struck me gently, and making an absolute minimum of sudden movements, I reached down and started my truck and slowly pulled away. He chased me, much like you might expect an angry dog to do, barking all the while. Needless to say, it played hell with my power naps from then on. Udikyo. Answer, you know what's crazy? I clicked this thread and was like, oh cool, an old semi-popular thread loaded with stories I've never read. Read a few, then got to the one about the freight broker with the defense contract, who unknowingly was dispatching loads of Tomahawk missiles. I think the scariest part of all this is realizing that I had read all these stories before, and that I've been on Reddit for a long fudge time. And I started thinking about my whole life, and shoot, then, the most surreal moment. I'm reading through comment replies. Read one that's rather striking and sounds like me. Check the username. It was me. Story 5. I-25 south of Albuquerque. There's a huge dip, straight down one side of a canyon and up the other. I'm a very safe driver, so I took the downgrade slow and crawled up the other side with my hazards on. Looking in my mirror, I see headlights from another truck at the bottom, then 2 jets of flame shoot like 20 feet into the air above it. This truck runs past me doing 80 up the slope. I didn't even know it was possible to put nitrous into a semi. I know it ain't legal, but I thought the devil himself was riding up on me. Story 6. My buddy is a trucker. He was stopped at this rest stop somewhere in Ohio. He was outside of his truck checking something near the rear trailer wheels. A car pulled upside him, and the driver rolled his window down. The driver was a middle-aged male and creepily asked my buddy if he wanted to have a good time. My buddy responded, "Nah, leave me alone." The guy driving the car sped off. Around 2 hours later, my buddy went back outside to check something near the rear wheels again. As he was bent down, he heard this car approaching quickly. It was the same man he encountered earlier. The man attempted to hit my friend with his car at probably 25 feet diameter, but was unsuccessful as my friend jumped under the trailer. The driver of the car stopped about 30 FT from the trailer and put his car in reverse. As he began to back up, my buddy grabbed his tire iron and threw it at the car. The tire iron smashed through the rear window of the car. The driver sped off immediately. My buddy didn't get a plate number or great description of the vehicle, or guy, as it all happened at night. He was upset that he lost his tire iron, though. Story 7. Not me, but my aunt. She was driving at 1 a.m. down rural roads in the UK. They tend to be quite narrow, no paths and no lighting, and didn't see a jogger in the road, wearing all black. Sadly, she hit him, and he died. The emotional toll on her was too much. She quit driving and became reclusive for some time. Answer. As well as the irresponsibility of wearing all black. I grew up in deepest countryside UK, and it was drummed into me to be alert to signs of any vehicles that might be around. Protocol is to get right off the road immediately, as it is likely that they won't be able to see you, and there is no room for them to avoid you, particularly if it's a large farm vehicle. Sorry for all that your aunt had to go through because of some sadly dead moron. Story 8. There's another driver where I work that tells a story about driving through the desert in Arizona back in the 80s with nothing around for miles when he broke down in the middle of the night. It was an easy fix. His fuel filter was clogged. He drained it a little to free up the fuel and got the truck running about 15 minutes later. He took off down the highway when he saw a man that was out of breath on the side of the highway that was staring at him as he passed. He said it looked like the guy had been running toward him until he got his truck running and drove away. He said if he had been there a few more minutes, the guy would have been able to walk up on him with his head in the engine bay. He said the look on the guy's face gave him chills, and telling the story you could see it still creeped him out. Story 9. In the 90s, I lived in a logging camp in northern British Columbia. It was a big one, made up of trailers and had about 300 people living there, including families. I drove a water truck on weekends when the camp was on days off. When driving on logging roads, you radio your kilometer markings with the name of the road to avoid collisions. Empty on Windfall 10 to say you were 10 clicks on the Windfall Road heading away from camp, and loaded on Windfall 10 to say you were coming back. Anyways, being a weekend, I didn't expect anyone to be hanging around except a skeleton crew. I had no idea that there was a kid's birthday party up on the top end of the Windfall Road. It's beautiful up there with a clear landing and a pond, so why not? The family hired 2 clowns from a nearby town for the kids. Apparently the clowns wrapped up their show and were heading back to camp, but they were not using the radio. I'm on the road in a big water truck doing 50 km, and they come bombing around a corner doing 50 k's in a fudge clown car, and we almost collide. I blasted the horn as this car with a plastic star on its roof goes whipping by with 2 screaming clowns inside, and I could just not figure out what the fudge had just happened. Story 10. A friend who is a truck driver told me this one. He was driving through the edge of some bushland on his way back to Perth, Western Australia, when he hit a kangaroo. He stopped the truck, grabbed his knife in case he needed to dispatch it, his flashlight, and got out. He went over to the kangaroo. It needed to be dispatched as it was alive and in immense pain, but he got this weird feeling that he was being watched. He flashed his light around and saw dozens of pairs of red eyes watching him. The whole mob of kangaroos was just standing there, watching him eliminate one of their mates. Kangaroos have red eyeshine. He quickly dispatched the kangaroo, bolted back to his truck, and took off. He said it was the creepiest shoot he had ever seen on the road. Answer. He went home and tried to put the incident into the past, a few stiff shots of bourbon, and he was ready to call it a day. Trucker Bob flipped on the TV and some mindless sitcom rerun was on. He soon started to doze, woken up by the sound of an overloud commercial. He hit the TV remote to turn it off. Too tired to head to the bedroom, he decided that the couch would do fine for the night and reached over to turn off the lamp. Click. The lights go out, and shining bright in the darkness of the room, he saw 20 pairs of glowing red eyes. Story 11. My father-in-law said he was hauling a truckload of Furbies when they started talking to each other. He said they didn't stop talking the whole time he drove halfway across America. Story 12. Not mine, but my grandfather's. One night after completing his water delivery, he stops at a roundabout to let the other car go through, but it doesn't, and soon people hop out with knives and tools, and they yell at him to cut the engine and to hop out of the truck. He guns it, smashing their car out of the way, and goes around to the roundabout and drives to the nearest police station and tells them what happens. He thinks they were trying to steal the bulldog from his truck, because the only way to get it is to steal it or buy a Mack truck. Story 13. Cousin's husband is a trucker, witnessed a shootout between cops and crackheads next to the gas pumps while pulling into a truck stop. Story 14. This is a story my dad told me. He was a long-haul trucker for about 15 years and currently shorter runs in the tri-state area. He and his older brother were tag-team truck drivers back in the early 2000s when timings weren't as closely regulated. They drove 2 trucks and would switch out when their time driving was up to hit deadlines faster. One night, as they were driving through Arkansas, I believe, my uncle was leading with my dad behind. My father recalls a giant poof of red, much like when you hit a deer in a semi. The pair thought nothing of it until they pulled over for the night. On my uncle's grill was a hand. Naturally, they freaked the fudge out and called authorities. The hand was confiscated, and it was later discovered to belong to a tragic end man who had jumped off an overpass and was disintegrated by my uncle's truck. They still made deadline, despite spending a day in jail. They were released when they found the tragic end note in the man's house. Answer: I dated a guy whose dad did some truck driving for a while. He was driving one, I am pretty sure, at night, and saw this group of people walking on the side of the road, thought not much of it. Then one of the guys jumped in front of his truck, and he said he will never forget his face. It was ruled that the guy was committing tragic end. Still a terrifying thing to happen. He didn't even have a chance to react. I don't think he drove trucks for much longer. Edit. If I remember correctly, this happened when they lived in Fort St. John, BC, although I can't confirm how close to here he was. Trucking at the time. Story 15. It was the night before Thanksgiving a few years ago. A woman was crossing a busy highway and got hit by a car. Police were there, but paramedics had not made it yet. The sight of her family holding her lifeless body with blood everywhere while cry hysterically is something I will not forget. Answer: yikes, that's horrible. One night when I was in my 20s and tipsy off my jerk, I decided to walk home from my buddy's house. He was willing to let me stay the night, but I started taking shots of whiskey and drank so much, I just lost my mind and decided to walk home. Well, he lived a long ways from my house, and I decided in my infinite wisdom to walk down I-25 at night in the dark, tipsy off my jerk. After about 30 minutes of walking down an interstate, there was a cop with a guy pulled over on the other side of the road who saw me, and he started screaming his head off at me to get off the god. Damn interstate. Looking back, I still can't believe I did that and how fudge retarded that was. 1 second of a driver not paying attention could have cost me my life. Story 16. When I was about 12, our family vehicle broke down on the side of the highway. The 2 adults asked me and my 10-year-old cousin to go walking and find a payphone because one was heavily pregnant and the other was disabled. We walked for about 2 kilometers when a trucker pulled over and asked what we were doing. We explained the situation, and he said to get in the truck and he would take us to Walmart. He was an older black man with a gray beard and a heavy foreign accent. As we climbed into his truck, he told us we should never, ever, ever get in the truck with a strange man because it's extremely dangerous, but we did it anyway. And he took us to Walmart, and we called somebody to come help us. Any random truck driver could have violation us and eliminate us easily. But thankfully, this one didn't. Answer: I was at a restaurant recently waiting to get seated, and a younger-looking girl came in that the front of the house was apparently familiar with. They started talking, and within a few minutes the girl had loudly given her age of 17 and that she was home alone for the weekend. I wanted to run over to her and tell her to never say that kind of shoot out loud in public, but I didn't want to be the creepy 38-year-old man. I should have anyway. Story 17. I have come upon some god-awful accidents at night. Cars completely under trailers with the tops basically sheared off. People laying in the road after being ejected from their car. The roads can be an awful place at night. The creepiest thing I have ever had happen, though, was one night I was making a night drop and kept getting the feeling like someone was watching me. The hair kept standing up on the back of my neck, and I just felt uneasy. I decided something was off and left to circle back in the morning. Turns out I'm pretty sure someone was watching me, because someone was shotted. Eliminate there a few nights later in an attempted robbery. That's one thing the person who trained me drilled into me, and I tell it to everyone I meet. Always trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. It's your subconscious way of telling your brain to pay attention. Edit. I have been reading through the replies and wanted to just add one more thing I have learned in regards to safety that we are taught. Always, and I mean always, walk with your head up at night when alone. Walking with your head down, especially looking at your phone, makes you an easy target. Also, never under any circumstances leave with an attacker. Your chances of being found at all, let alone alive, significantly drop the moment you leave the scene with the attacker. Answer: yeah, I have read about this before, and I always listen when my subconscious is warning me. The way it was explained where I read it was something like this. Your consciousness isn't capable to handle all the information your senses actually pick up. So instead, your subconscious filters out the stuff that isn't relevant to what you're focusing on. This is why you can overlook your keys while they are right in front of you. When you get a feeling that something is wrong, it's because the subconscious processed the information that was filtered out and finds warning signs. And then it desperately tries to relay the information to the conscious part of your brain. There are background parts of your brain, that is,